Greetings, everybody. Hello, and welcome back to the middle of the order. Another TOP for you guys today, and it is the New York Mets. The New York Metropolitans are the team in discussion today. New manager, Carlos Mendoza, former Yankees bench coach, I believe. Also want to mention really quickly, if you've been following along, I talked about the Giants yesterday. Forgot to mention new manager Bob Melvin. Want to throw that out there. Bob Melvin is going to be a good fit for the Giants as well. But we're not talking about the Giants. We're talking about the New York Mets. And Carlos Mendoza is going to take this 2024 Mets team into the season. And what are we going to expect from this team? Well, let's start by talking about last year. They were 75 and 87. They were 20th in runs for, 19th in ERA, and 18th in runs against. That was good for 4th in the NL East, 12th in the NL overall, and 23rd in MLB. They should have, by their record standards, have the 7th overall pick, but unfortunately they're over the luxury tax, so that 7th goes down to 17, and then they drop 2 spots during the draft odds and the lotto that they do now. So they have the 19th overall pick when we get to All-Star Week for those Mets. And last year they tried something. They went out for veteran aces, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. Both of them were New York Mets at the start of last year, and both ended up being in the championship series, just not with the Mets. Verlander went to the Astros, Scherzer went to the Rangers, and those two teams met up in the ALCS. Let's take a look at who the Mets added. They have quite a nice list of guys here. Luis Severino comes over from New York, the Yankees, that one. Jorge Lopez, Joey Wendell, Adrian Hauser, and Tyrone Taylor, those two guys with a trade from the Brewers. Harrison Bader, Sean Manaea. They re-signed Adam Ottavino. Shintaro Fujinami comes over there. And then a couple non-roster invitee guys, G-Man, Choi, and Jose Iglesias. And then, of course, Jake Diekman as well is not a non-roster invitee guy. He is on the 40-man. He was signed there. They lost a couple of guys, but nothing that's going to hurt too much. Carlos Carrasco is gone. David Robertson, Daniel Vogelbach, Tim LaCastro, Trevor Gott, and Rafael Ortega all are out of the Mets team. The rotation is looking like this. Jose Quintana leads things off there in the one spot. Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, 2 of the new guys. Adrian Hauser, 3 of the new guys. And then Tyler McGill rounds up that Mets rotation. In the bullpen, Edwin Diaz will be healthy. He'll be back looking to repeat his amazing 2022 year. Adam Ottavino, Brooks Raley, Jake Diekman, Jorge Lopez, and Shintaro Fujinami are the guys you should know in that Mets bullpen. The lineup is nice, but the Nets have always had a nice lineup. Leading things off, one of my favorite players, Brandon Nimmo, one of the best center fielders in the game right now. He leads things off there in the one spot. Jeff McNeil batting second, playing second base. Lindor is third at shortstop. Pete Alonso, the first baseman, batting fourth. Starling Marte in right field. DJ Stewart, the DH, and then the rookie catcher sensation Francisco Alvarez behind the dish, batting seventh. Brett Beatty is back, batting eighth at third base, and then Harrison Bader in center field in the 9-hole. The bench features Omar Narvaez, Mark Vientos, Joey Wendell, and Tyrone Taylor as well there. And the Mets do have a couple of injuries to note. The biggest one coming off recently was Kodai Senga. He should have been the ace of that Mets staff. He should have been the opening day starter. He had a strained shoulder. There was no timetable for his return, but he will be missing opening day most likely. And I think part of the Mets' success this year will depend on how long he remains out. Another hip injury here for David Peterson. He had hip surgery at the end of the year, I think in November. He's expected to miss 6 to 7 months there. And then Ronnie Mauricio, the kid, He had a torn ACL to start the year. Actually, it was like January 1st or 2nd that came out. He's out 8 to 12 months, and he's most likely going to be missing the whole 2024 season. Which is a tough blow for the Mets because he looked pretty good in the little bit of time that he got towards the end of the year. There's some non-roster invitee guys who have been fun so far in spring training. Of course, Ji-Man Choi, he's got a deal where he gets a certain amount of money if he's on the opening day roster, so hopefully Ji-Man Choi can do that. Luke Voigt is battling for a spot. Jose Iglesias. Ben Gamble was a name that I saw that I kind of perked up. And then Tracy Thompson right now, if you have been seeing Mets games, he's been doing really well for those New York Mets during spring training here, so hopefully he can land maybe that backup outfielder job that could be potentially up for grabs. And of course, they have a couple other guys in the minors: Sean Reed Foley, Joey Lachuzzi, and then of course Luis Angel Acuna, the brother of Ronald Acuna, who the Mets got in the Scherzer trade during the deadline last year. So he's expected to come up at some point this year. The Mets do have a nice farm system, considering that they always get 10 picks lower than they should. They have 5 guys in MLB's top 100. Drew Gilbert, Alex Ramirez, of course I mentioned Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio, who I also already mentioned, and then Kevin Parada, who are all part of MLB's top 100 and the Mets' top 5 prospects there. So they've got some guys that you should know. Taking a look at the free agents next year for the Mets, and there's a couple of big names here to note. Starting pitcher-wise, Jose Quintana, Luis Severino are both slated to be leaving it, as well as Adrian Hauser. Harrison Bader's on a 1-year deal, so he's supposed to be gone. Omar Narvaez, Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino for that bullpen, as well as Jorge Lopez and Fujinami, as well as Jake Diekman, but he does have a vesting option. For those of you who don't know what a vesting option is, it's a requirement that he has to reach this year in 2024. Had a hard time finding it, but I did find it. The vesting option is 58 appearances. So if Jake Diekman comes out of that Mets bullpen 58 times, he will get the guaranteed $4 million and be a part of the Mets team next year. And then, of course, the big name here, I saved it for last, Pete Alonso is a free agent after this 2024 season, and that's going to be a big talk about the Mets in general for this entire season because, what are they going to do with Pete Alonso? They're going to sign him to an extension? Are they going to let him walk? Are they going to trade him? And I think all of it really depends and matters on how those Mets are doing when we get past the All-Star break and enter the trade deadline period, because if they are nowhere close to it, you could maybe get a nice package for Pete Alonso if you don't think you're going to re-sign him. And Alonso's been a big piece of the Mets really since he came up. He won Rookie of the Year that year in 2019, where he broke the Rookie of the Year home run record. He also led the league with 53 home runs. This guy's been a power hitter, a huge home run hitter. He's a 2-time home run derby champ and a 3-time All-Star last year and the year before that in 2022 and 2023, both years finishing in top 20 in MVP voting. His first year in Rookie of the Year, where he was an All-Star also, he was 7th in MVP voting. Last year with the Mets, 154 games, 123 hits, 46 home runs, 118 RBIs, a 217 batting average. That needs to be better, and an 821 OPS. When you look at his numbers and look at his stats, yes, his best year of his entire career has been his first year, but Alonso still has a lot to do and a lot to give to the game of baseball. All years, really, 3 out of the 4 years, besides COVID, that he's played, he's hit 40 or more home runs. The 1 year he didn't was 2021, where he finished with 37. He still has a lot of potential and a lot that he could bring to a team, come playoff time, needing a first baseman. The Mets made the comments last year of saying that the window for them is 2025, 2026. So what this year is, essentially, is a placeholder year for the Mets. You know, the guys that they signed, a bunch of one-year deals. These are good guys who are okay players who are gonna make the team not look bad, but it's not gonna be a year where the Mets are going for postseason. You know, I'd be shocked if the Mets made postseason this year. I think they're just trying to, you know, get through a year with some of these guys, and you know that makes it really interesting for Pete Alonso because he's the guy who is not going to be around for 2025, 2026. You know, Brandon Nimmo, he's locked up long term. Lindor's locked up long term. Edwin Diaz and Kodai Senga are here until 2027, 2028. And those are the guys for the Mets, you know, and then obviously some of the young players as well. But I mean, Pete Alonso is definitely the one where it's like, okay, what do we do? You know, do you sign him to an extension? Do you trade him if he's playing well? You know, it really is an interesting call here for the Mets, and I really don't know what they're going to do. The trade rumors were circling him a little bit last year and a little bit during the offseason as well, but just because of other guys who are more of a reason to be traded, he didn't get as much, you know, talk as maybe he should have. But I think come the deadline, depending on where the Mets can be, Pete Alonso is definitely going to be one of those guys who might, for the right price, get dealt. But yeah, like I said, it's going to be a tricky year, especially with Kodai Senga down at the start of it. He was amazing last year in his rookie year, finished second in Rookie of the Year voting, just behind the winner, Corbin Carroll, seventh in Cy Young and an All-Star. He was 12-7 when he started, a 2.98 ERA in 29 games. He gave 55 earned runs, but struck out 202 batters there. So, I mean, he was a huge part of the Mets team last year. You know, any of the success that they had, you know, throughout the year usually came when he was on the mound. That ghost fork splitter of his is a nasty pitch. But, of course, with him being out for who knows how long, really, I don't like the Mets' chances, especially earlier on in the season. Of course, he will get healthy and he will be a part of the 2024 Mets team. But what point? You know, like I said, the Braves and Phillies run that NL East. And I would still, you know, the Marlins have all the pitching in the world. It's the offense that needs to be worked on that they really didn't get to do. But the Mets still kind of don't have enough for me to, you know, put them third in the division or to have them competing this year. You know, they, like I said, the office said that the window is next year and the year after that when these young kids come up, you know. That's what they're looking to do, and I don't see any of that happening or changing this year. You know, guys like Acuna might make the, you know, not make the roster initially, but he might come up at some point this year and be a huge part of this Mets team. If he is anything like his brother, then I would be worried at that point. You know, here come the Mets on a huge game winning streak. Acuna gets called up saying it's healthy again. Pete Alonso's tearing through the baseball. At that point, I would be a little worried if I was a Braves or Phillies fan. Definitely a Marlins fan. Like I said, the Marlins I put just above the Mets here. But, you know, who knows what can happen. Let's take a look at some of the other players here really quickly to talk about. Brandon Nimmo. He's been a guy. This is a guy who is all the more deserving of an all-star. He's never been one. Last year with the Mets, 152 games, 162 hits, 24 home runs, a 274 batting average, an 829 OPS. Like, Nimmo has been consistently sneaky good for a long period of time, and we just kind of forget about him. He always goes under the radar. There's always other outfielders to vote at the All-Star break and all this other stuff. Nimmo deserves all the love in the world. I love Brandon Nimmo. He's going to be a huge part of the Mets team in 2024. And another guy, of course, is the guy they traded for, huge package, signed long-term, Francisco Lindor. You know, came over in 2021 and really didn't have of that. And even last year, you know, or in 2022, excuse me, he still wasn't anything all that. He finished 9th in MVP voting, but he had a 788 OPS. Last year, again, finishing 9th in MVP voting, was a Silver Slugger and was a lot more like the Francisco Lindor that we know him to be. So I think he's finally getting into those years like he had with the Guardians from like 16 to 2019. I feel like a very strong year for Lindor is coming now that he's getting more and more familiarized with the team and the environment and what he has to do to be a great ball player again. I'd expect big things from Francisco Lindor in 2024. Had 153 hits last year, a 254 batting average, and an 806 OPS. The first time he had an OPS above 800 since 2019 with those Indians/Guardians now. But yeah, I think Lindor, 31 stolen bags too last year, the most in his career in a single season. So Lindor is going to have a good year upcoming. Maybe not like the 2018 Lindor that we had, where he led the league in runs and had 183 hits, but he's definitely going to have, I think, his best year with the Mets since coming over from the trade. And of course, another big part that they're getting back this year is Edwin Diaz. He missed all of 2023, but he is going to be healthy. He is going to be that closer. And the only thing that worries me is he's a two-time All-Star, relief pitcher of the year once. You look at his stats on Baseball Reference here. 2018, when he was with Seattle, before he got traded, he was amazing. Led the league with 57 saves, gave up 5 home runs, only a 1.96 ERA. Very good. In 2019 with the Mets, his first year, he was 2-7 record-wise. He came in 66 games, gave up 36 earned runs in 58 innings, a 5.59 ERA. He was horrendous. That was the year I think the Nationals had like an 7 or 8 run comeback against the Mets in the 9th inning. So, yikes there. Obviously, COVID year happened. 2021, he was pretty okay. Definitely a lot better than 2019. But then 2022, he was back to being filthy, and I mean filthy. In 61 games, he had 62 innings, recorded 32 saves, only gave up 9 earned runs. Not even double-digit numbers for him. A 1.31 ERA, an All-Star, 9th in Cy Young, and 16th in MVP voting. That's a hard thing for a reliever to do. Obviously, Felix Bautista was on that pace as well last year in 2023. But Edwin Diaz was great. So now you're entering 2024. He's had 2 seasons of absolute brilliance, and he's had 1 season where he was absolutely atrocious. And now he's coming back from an injury that doesn't really affect his pitching arm. Like, what are you going to get out of Edwin Diaz, right? Because it's essentially a flip of a coin. Like, yeah, he can be all right, but he can also be absolutely disgusting. 118 strikeouts in 2022. I mean, that's one thing that for the Mets to have the trumpets back at Citi Field that they're looking forward to. But yeah, overall, there are great players that the Mets have. Like I said, we've mentioned a couple of them. We've talked about a couple of them. Nimmo, Lindor, Diaz, Kodai Senga when he's healthy. Pete Alonso. Like, do you get him for a full season? Is this the last season for Pete Alonso in New York? Like, a lot of those questions can, need to be answered for the Mets, and that's going to be like the main storyline for them because, yes, they're not going to be, anything miraculous. They're going to be about what they were last year, a 70-win team, kind of just doing enough to still be good and help the fans, get through these years before some of that young talent continues and they can get back onto the level of competing with like the Braves and Phillies for the division. But overall, it is going to be a tougher year for the Mets, I would say, than some of the other teams that we're talking about. Taking a look at the over-under, it's the same as the Giants at 81.5. And I think the Mets are in the same boat as the Giants. Giants and Mets, very similar teams. They have great players, but they also have, not great moments and not great players on the back ends of things. And they're also just have better teams in the division. Like for the East, it's the Braves, it's the Phillies, it's the Marlins. For the West, it's the Dodgers, Padres, Diamondbacks. So you know, thankfully they have the Nationals and Rockies, so they're not dead last. But I mean, it's hard to put these guys anywhere else in my mind, either besides fourth in the division. And if you're coming fourth in division, there's no way you're winning 80 games. So give me the under on the Mets. I think they're going to, you know, fall in the same range as the Giants, have like a 76, 77 type win team. But no dice for 80, no dice for the division, not going to be competitive. I think the big thing is hoping Kodai Senga comes back healthy and still strong like he was last year. You know, hopefully Acuna gets called up. Francisco Alvarez, hopefully he continues to develop and be a good catcher. He was great last year for the Mets. And hopefully Edwin Diaz looks lights out in the back end of that bullpen. But that is going to wrap things up here for this TOP of the Mets. Let me know what you guys think, if I'm right, if I'm wrong. That's just how I'm feeling about the Mets' chances entering 2024. Thank you, everybody, so much, and I will see you guys next time.